So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So when we kind of prepared that panel before, and because we do prepare things, I told everyone, I want you to look at what's happening right now. I don't want it to be too futuristic. I have kind of bad visions of blockchain conferences from 10 years ago, when everybody used the word could, should, and would. And I want you to use the word can and will, and if possibly the word is. So let's try to look in terms of what we're seeing in terms of digital transformation, frontiers for innovation, across the technologies, but also across other technologies you might think of in terms of that. So let me introduce my panel first. I'm going to go from right to left. So directly on my right, we've got Greg Ombach, who is the Head of Disruptive Research and Technology and Senior Vice President at Airbus. We've got Georgia Monajani, who is Information Technology and Communication Director at Plenitude. We've got Bruce Miller, who is Principal Consultant at Lenovo. And last but not least, obviously, Tamin Kudus-Islam, Assistant Vice President, Innovation and Technology at Citi Global Insight. So thank you very much for joining us today. So let's talk about what people have been doing, because I feel sometimes in technology conferences we talk about a lot of stuff that might happen as opposed to the stuff that are actually happening. So Tamin, I kind of want to start with you because you have kind of an holistic view looking at working with Citi Global Insight. Can you maybe tell us what you're seeing in terms of where companies are investing, the type of technology, the type of sectors that are investing? Can you kind of, start us that way, please?
Absolutely. So if I maybe talk about a little bit about VC investment, so if we talk about the private markets, I think there's been a massive trend over the past decade from around 2010 to 2020, where you've just seen increasing amounts of investment in all sectors, but in particularly also the tech sector. So in terms of numbers, and don't quote me on these, this is not financial advice, but approximate numbers, I think it was around $50 billion in 2010 compared to around $350 billion by 2020. So you've got a 7x there of investment in, across the board, but also predominantly in tech. Interestingly, what's happened in the past few years, there's been a bit more of a divergence. So 2021, shortly after the interest rates lowered, following the pandemic, you saw VC investment globally increase to around 700 billion, so doubled in a year, which is pretty much almost unprecedented. But then since then, it's actually gone back down to around 350 billion. So I think what I'm trying to say is, we're in a new era now where actually you're going to see investment in a lot of different areas, not just tech, and we'll be talking, I'm sure, about a few of these areas today.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that even though you're saying that there's been kind of a decrease recently, it's still very much higher up than it was maybe a decade ago and 15 years ago. And I think that's something to bear in mind in terms of when we're seeing VC investment coming down, at an historical level, it's still very, very high compared to where we were. Maybe kind of the follow-up, do you see kind of any, we'll talk about AI, is AI kind of the big thing, or are you seeing kind of other technology where companies are investing quite a lot, and are you seeing maybe differences in terms of sector as well?
So I think AI has definitely been a big thing, even pre-ChatGPT, so pre-2020. I think what we saw in around 2022, at the end of 2022, when obviously ChatGPT came out, is a massive push towards generative AI. I think, when I ran some numbers the other day, it was something along the lines of maybe a quarter or so of all investments are linked to AI. Now, the term linked to AI is obviously very broad, but I think AI is still a massive growth area, and I think it's becoming ubiquitous in terms of the investment landscape of private companies.
So AI, and I think that's kind of a good segue to Bruce and kind of Lenovo, because obviously you look at infrastructure, data center. So first question to you would be in terms of what are you seeing? Because you also get an holistic view in terms of the clients that are using infrastructure, not just on one sector. So are you seeing kind of the same trend, or are you seeing something different as well?
So we're not just seeing AI workloads change the way people want to use infrastructure, but we're seeing other workloads, social media, remote working, hybridization of the workflow, and things like video conferencing. I know we use them all the time, but that has a huge impact on use of GPUs, as well as AI, as well as all the things we want to do with analytics and all these other things. What I do see is that people are struggling, of course, to get the power, the cooling, and actually house these environments effectively at the scale that they want them. And this is a cross-industry problem, and it comes down from data centers and how to get investment in data centers. And I'm seeing things like, as we're probably all aware of, places like Norway, Finland, and Iceland coming to the market with low-carbon, low-cost energy in abundance, and then how they have attracted and then are coping with the fact that they've suddenly got an awful lot of new data centers popping up. So I'm seeing this change the way the industry reacts, and what we're seeing from UK, which is trying to bring this together in, at times, what's quite a complicated infrastructure with different regulations, and the view from venture capitalists that it's a building. What do you mean you want to invest differently? And how to get that investment into facilities we can therefore use.
Yeah, and also I know you've done some work looking at what companies are saying, and what companies are saying specifically in terms of what's probably holding back or blocking change. So maybe if you want to say a few words on that, because I know you're going to do a presentation, or you've got a report coming out soon. I know
yes, I've got a report coming out. So I've been working with the Data Center Alliance about this, and I got 200 people very nicely to sit down in a workshop, and I nagged them into giving me written feedback on various things that were their hot topics. Because it's interesting, I've got a melting pot of people who run data centers, I've got a melting pot of other IT providers, I've got cloud service providers, I've got application providers, and I've got people who just consume IT there. So I asked them what the feedback was about what's holding them back from change. There's very little strategic thought about the whole supply chain, and this is always a problem. The code that you write changes the way the IT infrastructure works as much as NVIDIA coming out with yet another GPU. So we've got pressures on both ends of the market at that point about what you're consuming, what you're doing with it, versus actually what you design and what we actually then have to house. But at the same time also, they're struggling with business change, whether it's investment cycles or whether it's actually getting people to actually engage with IT AI initiatives, not do it themselves as a bit of shadow AI, but actually engage as a strategic operation, bring it together and come out with a proper solution. There's a lot of, well, we're waiting for industry guidance, but let's face it, a lot of us will be waiting a long time for that to be joined up. There is some stuff that's coming through that will help with that side, but the fact that we now regard data centers as a national infrastructure is a step forward, but at the moment, all this is still hidden from the average end user. You just see, you plug in, whether it's cloud or wherever, it still comes from a data center. It still has to be provided. We have to get the power, the networking, and all the facilities together to create the right kind of infrastructure you want to use.
Thank you, Rousseau. We've seen kind of from both your answers, yours and Tamid, that a lot of investment, a lot of money, a lot of demand as well, but not as easy as just saying, I'm going to do AI, this is going to happen, this is it. So now we can come to Georgia and Greg to kind of discuss with us what they've been seeing with the company. So Georgia, I'll start with you. So Plenitude is part of, I'm going to say Eni, or because I'm French, you know, the person the French way, or Eni, so the big Italian energy company. So can you give us some example in terms of where have you been investing, what have you been doing, and why have you been investing into those technology? What are the use cases that you're seeing?
Absolutely. So in Plenitude, there's 3 business verticals. We have energy production, we have retail, so we sell gas and power, and we have EV charging. So obviously, they are very different businesses, and we had the chance to apply AI across the spectrum. What we've been saying is that, of course, running AI is actually increasing the demand of energy. But that's not the only thing that it does. Actually, AI completely modify the way users and company use energy. I'll try to give you a couple of examples. Let's think, for example, about edge computing powered by AI. What does that mean? It means that a small devices, a smart meter, or maybe even a field device, is not only a data collector anymore, it becomes an intelligent smart device that can prompt action, sometimes even take action. So if we think about the device itself, already there is a huge shift. Let's think about the client, the user. Until up today, the client was mainly a consumer. With edge computing powered by AI, actually the same person can choose to be a consumer, a production, so a prosumer, so-called, or even somebody that just store energy. What does that mean? It means that what used to be slowly calculated by the company providing the energy now has to deal and match demand and response and storage offer from a multitude of people. And of course, as you can see, that changed the whole business model from a centralized one to a distributed one, which changed completely the paradigm of the energy business.
Yes, and I think that what you say is interesting in the sense that a year ago, when we wouldn't have talked too much about edge AI, about reasoning, about inference, we would have talked about training mostly. This year, we're starting to talk about these things. We're starting to talk a bit about agent, a lot about agent. I don't know what we'll be talking about next year, but I think what you highlighted is that it changes your business model as a company as well in terms of your consumer, or you're doing it internally, and therefore you need to be kind of ready to kind of be able to implement that as well.
Correct. You can apply it in everyday AI, so in what you already do, just to automate it, just to optimize it, just to do it quicker and faster, or you can actually apply it to slowly change your business model, which makes it incredibly interesting.
And now let's move on to Greg. So I'm assuming Airbus uses a lot of technology, at least I hope so when I fly one of your planes. Can you maybe tell us what you've been doing and what you've been working on and the use cases, what you've been seeing in terms of using technology and why you're doing these use cases?
First of all, I'm very disappointed that you don't want to talk about the future. Because
I know, we'll talk about the future later.
My title is Disruptive Research, Technology, Innovation. Therefore, I would love to talk about the future.
I don't want to talk about factories in Mars in 2050.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
let's do it for a few minutes.
That. There's 5 minutes to go.
Absolutely.
But right now.
Yeah. Look, the AI buzzword is with us already for many years, because we are talking about AI, then we are referring very, very often as well, in our case, to machine learning models, which we have already even on our products. Now, in particular case, if I will just skip the machine learning and I will start talking about more generative topics, we are applying this technology across our product portfolio, and I give you a few examples. In the one area where we are applying it is all about improving performance. And you can imagine we are an engineering company. We love making stuff. And therefore, from engineering perspective, we have to do a lot of simulations. And you can imagine that some simulations require a lot of time, computational time. Therefore, if we are combining the generative AI in the simulation, we sometimes can reduce even 100 times the computational time. Therefore, it gives us ability to speed up development or increasing the even loops of the simulations which you can do. With this, we can get better product at the end of the day. And it is already applied today. The second example is in terms of the productivity. We use the generative AI models in area of the knowledge management. It means it's really very important to capture the knowledge which organization has. And of course, it is only possible if you have proper data which is supporting it. Therefore, everything what we talk about generative AI requires, or even AI requires the proper data, which has to be already collected over the years in order to make this knowledge management in this particular case. And here you can imagine the different use cases where we have levels where, for example, as an internal engineer, you have access to more information as, for example, if you would give this access to somebody from outside. Therefore, this is something what we are also applying and using. And here as well, we have to distinguish between the two different kinds of the models which we are using. On the one side, you can use large language models, of course, which are much more energy consuming and requiring much more platform from the server perspective. But on the other hand, probably something like, 95+% of the use cases requiring just small language models, which are very specific for the given task. And it is where we are always trying to not to apply in models immediately, but first understand really what kind of the problem you are solving. And not every problem is for AI. Let's agree on that one. It means applying AI everywhere doesn't make sense. In many cases, and there are use cases which we have seen that applying AI is cost you more than not applying it, also from energy cost perspective point of view. Now, the second area where we are applying AI is all about our products. And in the products, I give you one example. Here, also the two buckets, the safety critical and safety no critical. Safety critical is, for example, you can imagine if we would have some autopilot which is driven by AI, you would like to ensure that this works well and is not hallucinating and suddenly our product doesn't know what to do. Therefore, this
especially if your product is a plane.
Especially if the product is a plane. Therefore, this would require different kind of certification, and this would require, which still has to be developed, this would require completely different development of the large language or small language models, which we are doing. But in the area which is not critical, and here, for example, Earth observation, we have satellites which are making the pictures of this, what's happening around the world in order to analyze deforestation or analyze other patterns. Here, our satellites, normal resolution is about 30 centimeters. Now, with generative AI, we improved it to about 15 centimeters. And then you could imagine that this improvement in resolution is creating already a lot of the new business models and new opportunities to capture the new information which was not possible before. And the third area is all about improving our performance in operations, because at the end of the day, we have to build the products. And in operations, in production, we have a lot of the data which we are accumulating. And then the one use case where we applied AI today in combination with computer vision is about improving safety in our operations. And for example, when you are building up the aircraft, they are the parts of the process where you don't want to have anybody around the aircraft when you are, for example, testing the high pressure on your fuselage. Therefore, in this case, what we are doing is we have cameras which are implemented in the production facility, and then with the computer vision, with the generative AI, we can distinguish what objects are around the aircraft, and during the given process, we can analyze, is this safe or it's not, and then give the prompts to the operators about the actions. Therefore, these are the real use cases which are today already in use. Yeah. But I would love to talk about the future as well.
We've got 60 minutes to go, so we'll talk about the future in a bit. I kind of want to. So I think what we've seen so far is there's a lot of use cases. Some are very unique to specific companies, specific industry. While they might be using the same technology. So it's not that easy to kind of maybe benchmark. But I think maybe a question that our audience will have, and obviously if you have questions, please use Slido. The question that the audience will have is, okay, we're making the investment, we know we want to use the technology, we know it's out there, but we're not entirely sure where to start and what to do. And, or do we face the challenges that exist? I mean, Ruth, you kind of mentioned already in terms of what's blocking change. So maybe if I go back to all of you again in terms of what are you seeing in terms of, you got a use case, you got a pain point, you got the investment, or you got the money. Let's say you have the money. That's the key thing. Let's say you have the money. Sometimes you don't. But let's say you have the money. But if you have everything available, or do you make sure that you can apply the technology the way that you want to, that it's a benefit to you? What are you seeing in terms of the best practices, I guess, and are you facing with those challenges? Yeah, want to start, yeah.
I think one of the most important things is really upskilling your workforce, making sure you have a workforce that is educated on things like using AI and any new technology. Because one of the things that I've found, at least from speaking to a lot of companies, is, a great technology has come out and everyone's super excited about it, but they might not necessarily know how to use it to the absolute best of their abilities. So I think workforce education is definitely a key point. I think something else is probably just starting off with your standard POC, your proof of concept. If you can figure out how to do that, that's a great starting point. Saying that is very, very different to then integrating, for example, if we stick with the example of AI, integrating an AI tool across the whole business, because then you're kind of going up against the constraints of maybe, a business that has 100, 200,000 employees.
Yeah, so human element, very important, reskilling, upskilling. That's critical. I think we've seen it across other panels around the day and also yesterday as well. Ruth, if you were to highlight something, what would it be?
I would pick on getting a business case underlined and agreed with the business themselves that they see value in this, and doing that business case so they see value not just from a POC, but from a pilot and from a full production rollout. because I see a lot of things falling in between. You'll get a POC done. Oh, yeah, it's really cool. It's really great. Yeah. We'll do a pilot. But no one's thought through what they're actually measuring, what they're proving. So absolutely hammer through to people to understand what they're going to do. So I'm doing a big rollout for a major retail company at the moment, Edge AI, all the wonderful things. Constantly, these things get stuck because guess what? There's about 25 different companies within that retail group. There's another 5 which are only partially owned by them. How do you tell all those different countries, Indonesia, Singapore, you name it, all these different geographies with different managements, that they're going to roll out something that they see no value in? You're not. So we have to get that value point proven, and after many years, despite being a techie, etc., I realized the only proof around that is with numbers. This saves you money, this creates you value, and make it a big number. So everybody on the board understands and then says, how's it doing? Have you done that yet? Instead of saying, oh God, not another project, yeah? So be bold, but also make sure that happens and it's robust, people buy in and they understand it, and then it will happen by itself. You don't need to push, people will pull it through. And that for me is one of the really important lessons I constantly see people forgetting, because yeah, it's hard to do. That's the nasty bit. But don't start the big project and set the expectations up if you haven't got that sorted.
So organization and tracking what you're doing, because sometimes companies might forget that. Just not do something and hope for the best.
No.
Georgia.
I would add to the organization, internal capabilities are crucial, as well as the base of it all, good data. So having a good data layer, data platform, which, where you have a strict governance, where you know what's in there, it's the first step. So data, capability, value model. We found really, really useful the AI Opportunity Radar. It's a methodology that Gartner usually promotes, and we have applied it, and it's brilliant. So you basically run workshop with representative of all the business and staff functions, and you start to highlight which possible user case to run, and then you rank them according to the value they could deliver, the risk they entail, if they are front-end or back-end, if they are everyday AI, or again, if they try to move you to another business model. And once you have that radar, it's all about having the money and deciding which one you can afford to develop, basically, and take it from there.
Okay, human element, organization, tracking, data. Greg, one thing.
Wow, only one?
Only one, because if you want to talk about the future, it's only one.
Okay. No, I will talk about maybe about more than one. But I think that the most important thing from my perspective are 3 aspects. On the one side is all about having the proper strategy in place, having the proper governance in place, and having the proper portfolio management in place. And now, if I'm talking about the governance, it's not just about bottom-up initiatives, because they are great and they have to be in organization across the board. For this, you have to have knowledge management done properly on the experts level, but also combination with the business experts in order to come up with some ideas which make sense for generative AI use cases. Now, if we talk about the governance, which I think is it's bottom up, but also top down, it has to be really done and has to be supported by the executive committee. And they have to be really committed to this, because those use cases, in many cases, have to be stopped on the way. It's like more or less like innovation projects. It means you never know if finally the outcome is going to be as big as you planned. Therefore, you have to be bullish enough in order to track the performance of the projects and then saying stop if this is not performing as expected. And therefore, it's all about the governance, portfolio management, and then process which is in place.
Good. 9 minutes to go. Want to talk about the future?
Let's go for it.
I know, you're excited. We have a question about the future, actually.
Yeah, boy.
So the question is, what's the future of AI in 5 or 10 years from now? I'm going to restrict it to 5 years, because I'm that bad. I'm French, I can do what I want.
Yeah, yeah. And we are also partially French company, therefore
Exactly, exactly.
I know the style.
AI is going to do cheese.
Yeah.
So be careful.
No, and wine, maybe.
As well.
So, who wants to talk about AI in 5 years?
I would love to talk about AI in 5 years.
Yeah, go on.
Look, I think it's honestly speaking, for me, it's just the beginning of the hockey stick. In this, what we see, what is currently happening, and it can be only bigger. And of course, there is the Gartner hype curve, and we are going to be seeing it, and we probably now are going to be falling down a little bit. But what we see currently in the industries is that those models, and we have seen it with the DeepSeek as an example, can be done not only on the big servers, they can be done also and run on the edge compute. And edge compute is, for example, our mobile phone, which we have today in the pockets. And therefore, what I am very excited about is how this generative AI will be combined with the physical world. And here it could be robotics, and we are talking about humanoids as an example, and a lot of things are happening there. And you could imagine that the humanoid or other robots were not as performant till now. They had all what they needed. They had the mechanics, they had the power, they had all sensors. They can see, hear, and be faster, better than human already today. The only thing which they haven't had till now was the ability to analyze this in the edge. It means exactly in the place where it's happening. But now with these models, which are going to be running in the edge, it means on those devices or on those robots, suddenly this will unveil and is already opening the opportunity that these technologies and new solutions are going to be hitting the physical world. And I'm sure in 5 years from now, majority of us is going to be here, maybe not present physically, but some humanoids are going to be sitting around.
No, you're all going to be here because that's how we make our money.
Okay. Then let's
you can have your money robots, we're not giving you a discount.
Yeah, therefore, this is happening, edge, the AI hit the edge, and this unveils the new opportunities.
Okay, Georgia?
Well, I already commented how I think that the edge will actually change the whole business model we are in as an industry.
And we also technology in 5 years as well.
Yeah, exactly. So focusing in 5 years, actually, I think we're going to enter the space of shared energy.
I like space.
Space. We should work together.
Yeah.
I think that I'm interested in humanoid, but I'm more interested in how actually human, 100% human, and machine will interact, and how we're going to start to see, actually we already start to see machine interacting with machine as well. I'm interested because that is going to really change the dynamic and the social also atmosphere at work. So I think that is going to be an important aspect of the evolution. It's going to be a cultural evolution. Yeah. We have seen it, probably you've seen it from close, how some collaboration between machine and human are already happening in the software development part of the job. And when you think about it in theory, you understand it. It's okay. When you start to see it happening, it blows your mind.
You're scared.
So, not only in that case, I was fascinated. Some other case, you might.
Let's be fascinated rather than scared, at least to start with. Bruce, what are you seeing in 5 years?
In 5 years, this is a very interesting time, isn't it? I'm seeing at the moment a huge impact on politics and geopolitics at the moment. Who has and who does not have technology? It's going to be an interesting one where we see how this spreads around from what we'd call at one point first world countries around the world and what that means. And let's face it, we're all seeing certain large technology players be a lot more political now as well. So this is going to, the societal change that we've seen, and let's face it, can you take a phone off a small child now? Have you tried? Don't, yeah? They've grown up with that. They've embraced it from babies with tablets and everything else. Technology is part of their lives. And they don't always see the kind of darker side of people understanding every single breath they take. So that will have a change as well, and how that works, and we all travel more these days, how that works around the developing world, and all those other geopolitical things that will happen. Data is critical to this, as you say. Do you trust the data? Is it the right data? What's happening? Who's governing it? Who's looking after my data to make sure it's safe? So many things that are going to happen in that time to influence what happens with AI.
Tamin, I know you've written something on quantum, so you can mention quantum if you want. But where do you see it in 5 years?
I think good guess. I'm definitely going to mention quantum. So just for a quick bit of background, I was fortunate enough to write Citi's big 150-page report into quantum computing, but we also put out one on quantum sensing. So you can probably guess what I'm going to say is that I think we're going to see some convergence with AI and other technologies. If I take quantum as just one example, obviously it's not just one technology, quantum. There's communications, sensing, and computing. Probably don't have the time to get into all of them, but let's just say with computing, it's going to be a new era of new type of computing. And one of the things that everyone's really excited about when it comes to quantum computing is in terms of molecular simulation, finding new battery technology, new potential ways of generating, creating fertilizers. And we already know AI is doing pretty damn well in terms of modeling proteins. Again, something else that quantum computing will be really good at. So I think there'll be a convergence there in the computing space. I think there will probably be a convergence also in the sensing space. So again, quantum sensors, there's probably about 5 or 6 different types. You can look at, quantum magnetometers that measure magnetism, or quantum gravimeters that measure gravity, but they're probably all going to require AI just because of the amount of information they're going to pull in. So in terms of, let's say, quantum magnetometers and AI, they might be able to be used in the future to help generate more accurate brain scans of people and maps of the brain. But also, if we look at, gravimeters measuring gravity, it doesn't sound necessarily that interesting at first, but actually what you realize you can generate very precise maps of the seabed and the seafloor and figure out really where everything is. You can figure out how to navigate without using GPS. But there's a lot of things going on, and I know I can see a few of
we are flying those sensors.
Yes. So absolutely, there's a lot of, I think, stuff that would happen in 5 years, and I'd love to be back with this panel in 5 years' time.
We will. I'm going to tell, I don't know if I can see, but we're going to talk about that in 5 years'
Quantum
time.
will help with the energy part of it as well.
Yep, absolutely.
And if you like quantum, there's an Economist Quantum event in the middle of May in London, so please join us if you want to talk about quantum. We also have on fusion in early April if you want to do that. Plug finished. We've got 1 minute to go, and I see the questions on Slido are probably longer than a minute, so I'm going to open it up. If somebody has a quick question for a quick answer, please raise your hand, and I will cut you off. We got a gentleman in the third row. Yes, I can count. Yes, that's it. Yeah, the mic is coming. Yes. It is the third row, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
Just to the lady, Ruth, you mentioned about iPads and the little ones sort of growing up. Do you see the society turning lazy from that standpoint?
Depends what you call lazy. You try telling them they're lazy and they won't take it very well. Your view of laziness is maybe not getting up and walking around. Their view of laziness is not posting enough on whichever TikTok, whatever. So it's a totally different generational view, a totally different approach. And now you're seeing a lot of governments saying, oh, no, we shouldn't let children have social media until they're 12. Good God. I think that went a while ago. However, have fun trying to sort that out. So I see a lot of generations working. I see a lot of people who've forgotten how to communicate by writing. Yeah? Keyboards are bad enough. Pen? I use an ink pen. My God. It's passed around. People, what is this thing? Yeah? So you'll see a whole different generational approach to that. I wouldn't call it lazy. It's a different way of working. Just think what you do without Google now. My God, an encyclopedia? Imagine, yeah? So it's a different way of thinking, working, and behaving that we're developing in people. And people mutate a lot faster than we think. We're constantly changing and reacting to different things around that, yeah? So huge amount of biological change that will happen naturally because of this, okay?
Yes, and I think there was a kind of an Ofcom report saying that a quarter of 12-year-olds were online more than 6 hours a day already.
Oh, easy, yeah?
So this is where we are. Yeah. I'm afraid this is all we have time for. So thank you very much to my panelists for a fascinating discussion. We talked a bit about the future. Thank you very much.